The MCU, the X-Men universe, and the Dark Knight trilogy are just some examples of successful superhero franchises, but there are a number of others that set up a universe which weren't able to get more than one film. So let's discuss what those films are, why they were cancelled, and what the future of that franchise would have been about. Krispy Kreme the movie ends with the tease that the Green Ranger, Tommy Oliver, will be joining the others in the sequel. A sequel that never happened, due to it only making $142 million on a budget of $100. Not only was the sequel cancelled, but so was development on a reboot. Going back a bit, in 2016, the year before Power Rangers was released, Lionsgate was hoping to make the franchise run at least 6 movies, with the entire story arc already planned out. Despite the film not doing great numbers at the box office, it apparently did amazingly well with merchandise sales and on-home release. This kept the door ajar to make the second film, which was said to not only include the Green Ranger, but also Lord Zed. When the Red Ranger, Darcy Montgomery, was asked about this second film in 2019, he revealed that the studio was looking to reboot the franchise without his involvement. This new iteration was rumoured to be set in the 90s and involve time travel. It also seemed to be the case where there would be movies and TV shows running simultaneously, and maybe linked, but I'm not 100% sure about that part. Though that ultimately didn't matter because all this was scrapped in 2024 in favour of something else. Maybe. For all we know, this could also amount to nothing, and they'll end up rebooting that reboot's reboot.
That might have been my fault. I'm so sorry.
Snake Eyes feels like the X-Men Origins Wolverine of G.I. Joe movies, because after the financial and critically disappointing entry, all those future planned origin stories were cancelled. Paramount Pictures and Hasbro clearly want to make this franchise work though, as they've even tried to fold these characters into the Transformers universe. But after Rise of the Beast also didn't do great box office numbers, that looks unlikely to go anywhere either. What other properties do Hasbro own? Mr. Potato Head. They could put G.I. Joe in a Mr. Potato Head movie. So what is the future of G.I. Joe? Well, after the financial disappointment of Transformers 1, Hasbro decided to no longer co-finance movies based on their toys. This means Paramount either has to fund the whole thing or find additional backing. Similar to Sony's licensing deal with Spider-Man, Paramount is required to be in production on a movie based on Transformers toys 5 years after the release of their previous to keep the rights. Assuming this is the same for G.I. Joe, they have until 2026 to start filming another one of those movies, unless that very brief tease in Rise of the Beast counts, in which case they have until 2028. However long Paramount has, even if we don't get a continuation on this Snake Eyes story, or this G.I. Joe story, it seems almost certain we'll see something G.I. Joe related sometime soon.
Why don't you think about it?
James Masters, who played King Piccolo in Dragon Ball Evolution, signed on for 3 movies, but was told that the studio had plans for them to make 7. This is why the mid-credits scene revealed that the character was still alive, setting up those sequels. The lead of that film, Justin Chatwin, later said those future plans would cover his Saiyan origins, introduce Gohan and Vegeta, while delving into the whole legend of Dragon Ball. But this wasn't required because unfortunately it only made $56 million at the box office and was negatively reviewed. For a property that's so popular, I'm surprised someone else hasn't made a live-action film or live-action TV show since this movie was released in 2009. I feel like enough time has passed since then for those discussions to start back up.
The 7 Dragon Balls will grant the holder one perfect wish.
Back before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, other studios were making movies based on Marvel characters. In 2003, Universal Pictures produced Hulk. While the movie didn't necessarily end on a cliffhanger, a sequel was planned with Ang Lee returning to direct and co-writer of the first film, James Schamus, once again on board to write. The movie was said to feature the Grey Hulk persona while having Leader and Abomination as the villains. Before the release of the first film, Universal Studios was targeting a May 2005 release date for the sequel, but because they couldn't meet this deadline, by 2006, more creative control was given back to Marvel Studios, who decided to fund the film, with Universal only distributing. They also wanted to go in a different story direction, due to the mixed reviews and slightly underwhelming box office, which meant removing Aang from the project. Despite the change of director and recasting Bruce Banner to be played by Edward Norton, Marvel Studios still intended on making the film a direct sequel. That was until Ed Norton rewrote the script to include a different origin story told through flashback, officially making it a reboot. After these rewrites that Norton and other writers did, the only things left from the original Hulk 2 script was Bruce hiding out in South America, plus the inclusion of Abomination and Leader. Chris Evans has played a few superheroes on the big screen, but his most notable character is obviously Nick Gant from 2009's Push. And as we all know, this film ends setting up a sequel where Kira opens an envelope with a photo that proves she was actually in a relationship with Nick and is now required to kill Agent Henry Carver. For the very few people who don't know what this movie is about, it takes place in a world where people are born with superpowers categorized into different groups, like movers, who have telekinesis, pushers, who have telepathy, watchers, who can see into the future, and others. So yeah, it's basically a superhero movie released before the height of superhero movies, which is partly why it made less than $50 million at the box office on a budget of $38. I couldn't find any info about a sequel, but with the movie literally ending on a cliffhanger, the filmmakers were clearly intending on continuing this story. They did sort of continue the story, just in a different direction and a different medium, releasing a 6-part prequel miniseries a month before the film's release.
It's not gonna happen, okay?
Before the first Green Lantern movie was even released, the film's director, Martin Campbell, was talking about it being a trilogy, with the sequel following Sinestro becoming corrupt by the dark power of the Yellow Ring, as teased in the post-credit scene of the first film. However, due to the negative reception of said film, and it being a box office disappointment, those plans for future films were tossed in the bin. Green Lantern was actually supposed to be the first movie in the DC cinematic universe, but because of the previously mentioned reasons, they decided Man of Steel would be that film instead, and thus the 2011 Green Lantern film is the sole movie to exist within that universe.
A great light has gone out in the universe.
Not only did Disney intend on making a sequel movie to Sky High, but also a sequel TV show. The movie didn't set up these sequels, but every single actor, minus Kurt Russell and Kerry Preston, had signed contracts to be a part of a TV show. I presume Disney's plans were to make a number of seasons of that before making the sequel titled Sky High Save You, the U standing for University. The students would have graduated either during the TV show or at the beginning of the sequel movie, then it would be about them attending college. While Sky High was positively reviewed, its box office of only $86 million didn't demand a future for these characters, and thus the rare non-comic book inspired superhero movie only lasted one film.
I can't do anything more to help you. I'm not Wonder Woman, you know.
The financial and critical reception to 2015's Fantastic Four was the opposite of fantastic. According to the very Marvel named Mark Millar, who co-wrote the Ultimate Fantastic Four comics that inspired this movie, Fan Four Stick was intended to take place in the same universe as the X-Men universe. Though others claim this was more of a wait-and-see situation. Basically, if the movie did well and was positively reviewed, a crossover between the Fantastic Four and X-Men would be heavily considered. Even before the movie started filming, 20th Century Fox announced that a Fan Four Stick sequel would be released in mid-2017. Then after the film's release, producer Simon Kinberg said those sequel plans were still in motion, only it looked likely the date would be pushed back. Tommy Wiseau, director of what some consider the worst movie ever made, The Room, said that he enjoyed Fan Four Stick and expressed interest in directing the sequel. Now, Fox still had the rights to the Fantastic Four until 2022, so they either had to make a sequel or reboot it again to keep them. But the rights went back to Disney 3 years earlier when said company bought 20th Century Fox. If you want to know more about the behind the scenes of the 2015 Fantastic Four movie and the initial plans, I've made an entire video about it, which you can check out in the playlist at the end of this video.
Say that again?
Each Punisher movie is set in a different universe, and each of them only got one film. Even though they didn't all end on cliffhangers, these movies, like all Marvel movies produced by companies other than Marvel Studios, required the studio to keep making movies with the character every so many years to keep the rights. This means sequels for each of these Punisher movies were absolutely considered before their movie even went into production. 1989's The Punisher, starring Dolph Lundgren, never actually got a wide theatrical release in the United States because the production company New World Pictures had financial problems, leading to new management who decided to just have a home release. It did, however, make $30 million internationally on a budget of only $9 million. Because of this, there were talks of a sequel that would allegedly include Jigsaw as the main antagonist, but due to Dolph's disappointment in the first film, he declined to return. This led to the character being rebooted with Thomas Jane in 2004, but his version also got a cancelled sequel, and the plot was also said to have Jigsaw as the main antagonist. After the budget was reduced, Thomas Jane dropping out due to creative differences, and multiple directors pulling out due to script issues, The Punisher 2 was officially cancelled after 3 years of lingering and rebooted with Ray Stevenson in 2008, a movie that finally had Jigsaw as its main antagonist. So, with Jigsaw now already on the big screen, the next villain set to appear in the Punisher Warzone sequel was going to be Barracuda. Before the release of Warzone, Ray Stevenson was asked if there was going to be a sequel, in which he replied, "If it works, we'll get to do it all again." Unfortunately for him, it didn't really work or make any money. So the sequel was cancelled, the rights to the character reverted back to Marvel Studios, who then adapted the character on Netflix, played by John Bernthal, who still plays the character to date.
You asked me for a favor. I did it.
Flash Gordon ended with a question mark, but it should have ended with a full stop, because it's been 50 years and we've gotten no sequel. This question mark was added because a sequel was considered before the film's release, with Brian Blessed, who plays Prince Vulcan, saying that the sequel was going to be set on Mars. At the time, the film wasn't reviewed very well, but over the years, the film has received a cult following. However, the main reason for the sequel being cancelled was due to Sam J. Jones not having any interest in returning due to disagreements he had with producer Dino De Laurentiis. In fact, Jones left the project before Flash Gordon was even finished, which is why some of his dialogue is dubbed by Peter Marinka. Despite there being no Flash Gordon sequel, there has since been numerous TV shows, talks of a reboot movie, and Ted.
Thank you for saving every one of us.
Oh, you're welcome.
There's nothing that definitively says that Venom, Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven the Hunter take place in the same universe. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to say they're all in separate worlds. Morbius set up putting a team together, and Martine Bancroft becoming Martine Vamcroft, am I right? Madam Web set up a Spider-Woman team-up, and Kraven the Hunter set up the Chameleon and wearing a jacket. But after the release of Kraven, it was pretty much confirmed that none of these movies would be getting sequels, and that the live-action Spider-Man spin-offs were done. At least for now. If you're wondering why they've been cancelled, these three films have a combined worldwide box office of $330 million on a budget of $280 million, and a combined Rotten Tomatoes score of 42%. Again, all of that was combined. Look, movies are subjective, so if you enjoyed these films, that's awesome. But I think a bit of a break to think about the future is a good thing for when Sony inevitably has another crack at live-action Spider-Man spin-offs.
Intriguing.
While 2008's Hancock may not have directly set up a sequel, it is worth mentioning for a number of reasons. 1, it made more money in 2008 than Iron Man. 2, everything that was popular 10 plus years ago is getting sequels now. And 3, there have been serious talks, even in recent times, about making a second entry. Immediately after the film's release, there were discussions about a Hancock 2, where Will Smith said, "The ideas aren't as developed for Hancock yet, but we're building out an entire world. I think people will be surprised at the new world of Hancock." The following year, the studios hired screenwriters and confirmed that Charlize Theron would reprise her role. Then there was pretty much no news for over a decade. That was until February of 2025, when Will Smith appeared on XQC's Twitch stream saying,
"There's a really cool Hancock 2 idea. Zendaya will be being approached for Hancock 2.
Even though nothing is official, I wouldn't be surprised if Hancock becomes the next of Will Smith's movies to get a much later sequel alongside Bad Boys and Independence Day.
Good job!
Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy got a sequel, but the 2019 Hellboy did not. Though it was definitely expecting to get one, because not only did it end teasing Abe Sapien, but there's a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene teasing Lobster Johnson and Baba Yaga. Despite all this feature setup, the movie only made $55 million on a budget of $50, and was unfortunately negatively reviewed, so there doesn't seem like any discussions about a continuation on this continuity were had post the film's release. It did, however, once again reboot in 2024, but that only made $2 million on a budget of $20. It just seems like the Hellboy franchise doesn't really have a large following, because even Del Toro's version didn't do amazing numbers at the box office. While there is definitely a cult following towards the character, I sadly don't think it's big enough for us to continue getting Hellboy movies in the future.
See, I don't like that.
James Gunn has been involved in a number of superhero movies, including the 2010 film Super. But that's not the film I'm going to talk about, because that didn't set up sequels or a cinematic universe. Or did it? Because another movie that James produced about a superpowered character, titled Brightburn, is set in the same universe as Super, and that definitely set up the potential for sequels. Now, the film might have only made $33 million at the box office, but the budget was only $6, so it probably would have been profitable. When asked about the future of the Brightburn universe, the filmmaker spoke about plans involving things teased in the credits, but due to complicated rights issue with production company H Collective, it seems unlikely we'll be getting a Brightburn 2.
The mainstream media, as usual, trying to sell you a load of bullshit.
Bloodshot didn't just intend on making a sequel, but Columbia Pictures was hoping this would be the start of a shared cinematic universe featuring an array of characters from Valiant Comics. Both Bloodshot and Harbinger were supposed to get 2 films each before getting a Harbinger Wars crossing over the two. Harbinger was actually meant to be released before Bloodshot, but during development, the studio decided to focus on the latter. However, when Sony lost the rights to Harbinger in 2019 and acquired by Paramount, the possibility of a crossover became more complicated. Due to Bloodshot being released just as cinemas were closing due to COVID, it meant that the film didn't do well financially. Apparently it did do well via streaming, so those Bloodshot sequel plans remained. Although as of 2025, there has been little to no further details surrounding Bloodshot 2, Harbinger, or the shared Valiant cinematic universe.
And that's enough.
Is Quatermain actually dead in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, or is this a Superman situation? I couldn't find if there were any talks of there being a sequel to this 2003 film, but it made $180 million on a budget of $78 and had disappointing reviews, so there didn't seem like there was much demand to continue this universe. It is apparently getting a different universe, but the last time we heard anything about that was in 2022, so due to the large gap from then to now, there's a high possibility that this has just been quietly shelved.
Now I wish to see it anew as the century turns.
The Kitchen is based off the DC Vertigo limited series, which is about something. I don't know, I haven't seen the movie or read the comic. But no one else saw the movie either. Though what I do know is that it ends with a character named Kathy and Ruby, but not Claire because she died, making plans to expand their territory in Uptown. Now again, I don't know what any of that means because I haven't seen or read The Kitchen. I've been in a kitchen before, but the fry pan had no answers for me. Anyway, from my research, it seems like they set up the movie to continue on, but I couldn't find any clips online to vouch for that, or even offline. Again, my fry pan is very unhelpful in this department. Great for frying things though.
Frying pans! Who knew, right?
1997 Spawn did not spawn a sequel. The movie ends with the title character defeating the Violator, telling him he's coming after his boss next. And like the Violator, the sequel film then became stuck in development hell. According to Spawn creator Todd McFarlane, the second movie would only have Spawn be a minor character, instead focusing on detectives Sam and Twitch. But instead of continuing with this version, in 2007 it was decided that they would be doing a reboot. McFarlane would be funding the film himself, saying, "Even if I have to produce, direct and finance it myself, it's gonna come out." This version was said to be dark and scary. Nearly a decade later, Todd announced that he'd finished running the script, and notable horror production company, Blumhouse, would be involved. By 2018, Jamie Foxx was cast as the title character, with filming set to start in 2019. But then it was delayed to 2020, and as of 2025, it's still only in active development. It does however feel like a situation where everything is ready to go, it just needs to start filming. So someone just give Todd a camera and let's go.
The choice has been made. For now.
Unlike the Terminator, Skeletor will not be back in this iteration of Masters of the Universe. On a budget of $22 million, the 1987 film only made $17 million at the box office. For this reason, the written Masters of the Universe 2, Revenge of the Beast script was not required. This story followed Skeletor's return to Earth, possessing the body of a business person named Dark, and uses their technology to take over the universe. But not if He-Man stops him. Speaking of which, casting changes were to be made to accommodate a smaller budget of $4.5 million, the most notable being pro surfer Laird Hamilton replacing Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, but also Dolph just didn't want to return. Although, when the Cannon Group realised they were unable to pay Mattel to keep the rights, they instead used this script, their cancelled Spider-Man movie script, plus the costumes and sets from those films to make 1989's Cyborg starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. However, like most movies based on known IP, Masters of the Universe will be back in a reboot scheduled for 2026. And it's filmed, so unless Amazon writes it off for tax purposes, Skeletor will be back. Now, I only spoke about movies that were blatantly like, this is the first film in a saga. Not necessarily movies like The Losers, Green Hornet, or Howard the Duck, whose stories wrapped up, but left the door open to make more if it did well. I also didn't include movies that only got one film but are set within a larger universe, like how Black Adam is set in the DCEU, the New Mutants is in the X-Men world, and Elektra and Daredevil share a universe. But I've also made a video on franchises that didn't get a conclusion, which is either out by the time you're watching this, or will be out very soon, which you can check out in the playlist, along with other cancelled movies, like movies that set up a sequel or cinematic universe but ended after one film, book series that only adapted the first novel, cancelled video game sequels, cancelled Marvel movies, DC movies, Star Wars, and more. But thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments which of these movies you wish kept going, and don't forget to absolutely obliterate those like, hype, subscribe, and share buttons. I'm just kidding. Only do it with enough force that it registers. I don't want any of you breaking whatever device you're watching this on.